Hey guys, this is Sam for Rizom-Lab, and in this RizomUV Basics tutorial, we're going to get you up and running with the fundamental workflow for unwrapping in RizomUV and its updated UI. So let's move on over to RizomUV. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need to do is load an object. There'll be a link to these objects in the description of this video. So let's go up to Files, and we have a couple of options here, Load and Load with UVs. I'm going to load with UVs first, and select our cube. This will load your model and any UV layout embedded in the file. So let's do that again, but this time we're going to just choose Load. And we'll select our cube. Load will load the model and disregard any UV information. So you'll notice there's no cuts on this model and there's no UV. So now we have our model loaded, let's talk about control configuration very quickly. If we go up to Edit, all the way down the bottom here we've got Keyboard Mouse. We'll click this and this dialog will open up. Now if we look at our mouse preset here, mine is set to C4D, and that's because I'm a Cinema 4D user, so I'd like to mimic that control here in RizomUV. You can do the same if you're a Maya user or a 3ds Max and any of these. So you can just select what you want and OK it, and RizomUV's controls will now mimic the 3D application that you're used to. You can actually view these controls. If we go up to Window and the contextual help here, we'll have this pane locked here. You can see the little lock button, and it will tell you about the control scheme. So for example, Orbit for me is Alt left mouse button. And if I do that in the 3D viewport and drag, it orbits. Same with Alt right button, that is zoom for me, and Alt middle mouse button is pan. So if I click that in and drag, we pan. So this might be slightly different for you if you're using a Blender control scheme or Maya, but you can view that here so you can keep track of exactly how you do things. I'm going to actually unlock this, so this will get rid of it, so it's not a distraction for you guys, and we'll move on. Okay, let's talk about the fundamental workflow for all objects when working in RizomUV, and that is select your seams, cut your seams, unwrap your islands, pack your islands. This is the fundamental workflow no matter what you are unwrapping. So let's start by selecting seams on our object. First, we need to make sure our select tool is selected and we're in edge mode. We can left click a seam and you can see it highlighted here in teal, and that means that this edge is selected. You can click in an empty space to deselect, and you can also add to a selection by holding shift. So if I left click to select this seam and then hold shift down and left click, I can add to my selection. So I'm going to select some seams around my object ready for cuts to be made. So I'm going to select this seam, shift click for this, shift click for this, and I'm going to do the same here. Shift click to add, and I'm going to do the same around the other side here, at the bottom, and here as well. So now we have our seams selected, we need to cut them. This can be done via the button in the seams panel up here. So this is the cut button, but if I hover over it, we get this tooltip, and within that tooltip, it will tell me what the hotkey for this function is. In this case, it's C, so you can either press this button or you can use the shortcut button C. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press the C key, and you'll notice that our selection that was previously in teal is now orange. This indicates that these edges have now been cut. Okay, so the next step is to unfold our model. You can use the unfold button in the Unwrap panel up here, or we can use the shortcut U. I'm going to use U, so if I hover my cursor over the object and press U, you'll notice that the object is unfolded, but it is not sitting within the UV tile. So let's undo this by pressing Ctrl Z. And this time, let's place our cursor in an empty space and press the U shortcut. This time the island is unfolded and packed within the UV tile. This is because there was no pre-existing unfolded islands, so this object is automatically packed too. Something else to consider is orientation. Notice that RizomUV has seen fit to pack this island in a vertical direction. So let's have a look why. I'm going to go up to our packing panel here and open the packing panel attributes. And in the attributes, we can see that we've got a section called orientation, and the initial orientation has been set to automatic. This means that RizomUV will make a decision itself about the best way to pack this island. If the island is close to a vertical orientation, RizomUV will make it fully vertical, and the same with horizontal. So let's be more explicit about this. Let's press this drop down, and we have a few options here, and I'm going to choose horizontal, and I'm also going to pack our island. This can be done via the pack button in the packing panel, or we can use the shortcut P. So I'm just going to use the shortcut, so pressing P, we can see that this island is now horizontal in terms of its orientation. I'm going to put this back to vertical and pack again. And now you can see that our island has a vertical orientation. I'm going to put this back to automatic and continue. So initial orientation will be something that you use a lot in regards to packing. Okay, so let's undo all the way back before we made our cuts. Now, I set my seams correctly and I got the result that I intended. But what if you have a more complex object and you don't cut all the needed seams before unwrapping? Well, let's do that. I'm going to deselect these two front seams here. And I'm going to cut by pressing C, unfold by pressing U, and I'm also going to pack our object as well by pressing P. So there's a couple of things to note here. This time the object is not fully relaxed, and this is shown by this pink colour and this blue colour. This denotes distortion, and we'll go over this shortly. You'll also notice that the orientation of the island is slightly different too. So now we've got this part of the way, let's make some extra cuts and fully relax our UVs. And this time we'll do it in the UV view. So I'm going to select this seam here, and I'm going to click this seam here, press C to make our cuts, press U to unfold, and P to pack. You'll notice this time we have our object unwrapped, but in a different way. And this actually gives me the opportunity to talk to you about welding. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut the squares at the top here off. So I'm going to select this and then select this edge and cut. And now I'm going to select this edge here. You'll notice that there is a line connecting this edge to this edge. And this denotes an edge pair. This means that this UV edge and this UV edge actually share the same edge in the geometry, which is here. I'm now going to weld these edges together, and this can be done via the weld button, which is here in the seams panel, or we can use the shortcut W. So I'm going to press the shortcut W. And I'm going to do the same thing the other side as well. So let's select this edge. And notice that the corresponding edge and the island that it belongs to always comes to the selection you made when welding. So I'm going to press W again, and that edge and the corresponding island was brought to my selection. So that's the basic workflow. Select seams, cut seams, unfold, pack. And if you haven't cut all the seams you need, you can continue to do so after unwrapping. And if you need to reconnect seams, you can do this by welding. So now that our unwrap is complete, we will want to save it back to the file we initially opened. And you can see that that file is listed in the title here, rcube.fbx. So to save, we'd go to Files, and then we'd just hit Save. And now you'll see this message at the bottom here, indicating that we've saved our UVs back to the file that we originally opened. If you wanted to save this as a separate file, you could use Files and Save As. Okay, let's load our next model, but this time we're going to do it a little differently. So I've got this Windows Explorer window open here, and we're going to be loading this cylinder.fbx, and I'm just going to grab this and drag this into our window. I don't want to save the changes before loading. Notice that this time unfolded UVs have been loaded. That's because this model file already contained these UVs, and when you drag and drop a file, it's the equivalent of load with UVs from the file menu. Okay, so this isn't an ideal unwrap for me. as I like to keep the caps of my cylinders attached to the body. And there's a few problems with these UVs too. So let's start with this teal coloured island here. The reason it's a dark teal is because we are looking at the back surface of this island. It's flipped. So let's try welding this to our body. Making sure that we're in select mode and edge mode. I'm going to choose this edge here. I'm going to press the W key to weld, and things aren't quite right. And that's because there's a mismatch between the flipped state of this island and this island. So let's undo this, Control Z. And what I'm going to do now is make sure that we're in island mode, select our island, and then I'm going to hit the transform tool, and this will bring up the transform attributes. One of these attribute sections is flip, and you have a few options here. You can flip with the left axis horizontally, the axis in the middle, and to the right, and you can do the same thing vertically as well. So I'm just going to flip this in place down its center horizontal axis. As you can see, this is facing the correct way now. So let's try welding this again. I'm going to go back to edge mode and our select tool, select this edge, press W. Perfect. I'm going to do the same thing with this island as well. I'm going to select this edge up here. There we go. Press the shortcut key W. And now both of our caps are attached to the body of the cylinder. Okay, so now we have everything connected. Let's talk about this colorization. This represents distortion in the UV polygons relative to the 3D polygons. Red equals pinching, blue equals stretching, and a grey is neutral, which is what we're aiming for. If we look at the bar at the bottom, we can see that it's set to distortion, and these lines along the bar here represent polygons and where they reside along the distortion gradient. We can see this distortion in the 3D view too, and it becomes even more apparent if we add a checkerboard to our object, and we can see that these checkerboard squares are not uniform. They're larger here where it's more red, and they're smaller here in the blue area. So how do we remedy this distortion? Well, we can perform an optimize operation on this, and that can be done from the Unwrap panel. And here's the optimize button here. And the hotkey for this is O. So with my cursor here, I'm just going to press the O key. And now you can see that this checkerboard is completely uniform now. And we have no colorization on this model. And all our polygon lines on our distortion bar are now in the middle, which is neutral. Give that a quick pack, and now it resides inside our tile. This is important for texturing because it means that we can reduce the distortion in our textures. Okay, so let's load our last model. We'll just load this time. So, File, Load. We don't want to save this. And we'll load our quad sphere. So let's go over loop selections. I'll make sure that we're in our select tool and edge mode, and I'm going to open up our contextual help. So if I double click on an edge here, it will select the entire loop. And if we look over to our contextual help, you'll see that select loop is double left mouse button for me. We can also add to this selection by shift double left mouse button clicking. So I can do that here, hold shift, double click, and do the same there as well. There's also another way that you can select loop, so let me clear my selection. And I'm just going to choose these three here, so select, shift select, shift select. And I can come up to our select menu here. And if I come down, we have this option of selecting loops. And you can see the shortcut for this is Alt-X, and that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to press Alt-X. And just based off of those edge selections, you can see the loops have been selected for those edges. So let's clear that, and I'm going to make some loop selections. So I'm going to double click here. I'm going to shift, double click here. I'm going to do the same thing for this side as well. And I'm going to do this here. And I'm also going to do this here. Then I'm going to press C to cut, U to unfold, and P to pack. Much like before, I didn't make all the cuts that I needed, so we can do this after the fact. I'm going to double click on this edge here, and I'm going to do the same thing here. Shift, double click. C for cut, U for unfold, and P for pack. You'll notice with this object, when a pack is performed, even with the initial orientation set to automatic, the island is rotated slightly. So we can give this a nudge in the right direction. So what I'm going to do is select this border edge here, double click on that. And then I'm going to select our transform tool. So we get our transform attributes up. And there's a section here called Orient Island. So I'm going to orient this island based on this selection that I've made here. And I'm going to do this horizontally. So now the orientation is the way that we want it. We can make sure that this is fit inside our UV tile. So I'm going to press P to pack. But oh dear, our island has returned to its orientation that it had before. And this is where Pack Translate comes in. If we go up to the packing panel and click on this little drop down arrow here, we have a function in here called Pack Translate. Now you can execute it from this menu, but I'm actually going to drag it out into our packing panel. And now you can see it resides here. The shortcut for Pack Translate is Shift P. So I'm going to select this edge again. I'm going to orient our island horizontally. And instead of pressing P for pack, I'm now going to press Shift P. You can see that this time the island was packed, but its orientation wasn't changed. So hopefully now you have an understanding of the basic workflow in RizomUV. These steps are the backbone of unwrapping any object. Select your seams, cut your seams, unfold the object, pack your islands. In the next tutorial, we'll be diving deeper into seam selection and the various different ways this can be done. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. If you enjoyed our video, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for video updates. You can check us out on social media, Discord, and our website, links in the description. And if you're looking for more RizomUV content, you can choose one of these videos on screen. That's it. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.